the lake that draws you into its depths. The lake seemed tranquil, reflecting the sky like a perfect mirror, but something in the dark water drew the curious in an irresistible way. There were no waves, no sound, just an absolute stillness that seemed to call them by name, promising something no one could resist. Anyone approaching felt a strange sense of security mixed with unease. A slight chill ran down their spine. Their fingers felt heavy, and their mind was invaded by images and memories that didn't belong to that moment. Small objects left on the shore disappeared or moved inexplicably, as if the lake were alive and observing every gesture. The air around grew heavy. The low-lying fog thickened and the forest seemed to fall silent all around, as if every sound were sucked into the dark water. The lake didn't need to chase after anyone. It simply waited. Just when you thought you were safe, the calm surface concealed invisible hands ready to pull you down. Not just your body, but your perception of everything you thought you knew. As visitors approached the shore, strange little signs began to appear. The water remained still, but subtle ripples appeared in places where nothing had fallen. Some noticed reflections that didn't correspond to reality, shadows that seemed to move on their own, and a feeling of being watched by something invisible. The longtime residents of the region avoided the lake and told stories of unexplained disappearances. Those who tried to explore the place returned changed, with lapses in memory, confused about what they had seen or experienced. Some forgot details of their own lives, others felt that parts of their memories had been absorbed by the lake. A group of young people decided to spend the night near the water. They set up camp, lit a campfire and flashlights. But during the night they heard sounds impossible to identify. Small movements in the water, whispers that seemed to come from the bottom of the lake, and fleeting shadows created an atmosphere that defied reason. At dawn, they couldn't remember exactly what happened during the night, and noticed that small personal belongings had disappeared or appeared in different places. The surrounding forest seemed to reinforce the feeling of isolation. Tall trees blocked trails, the low-lying fog blurred perception, and any attempt to return the same way seemed impossible. Even without visible signs of danger, everyone felt that the lake and the vegetation worked together to guard an ancient and dangerous secret. The lake didn't need to attack explicitly. Every ripple, every reflection, every submerged shadow served as a silent warning, testing the courage and curiosity of those who approached too closely. Those who stayed close long enough felt the irresistible call of the water, a silent invitation that was impossible to ignore. As the day wore on, the lake began to reveal subtleties that made any visitor uncomfortable. The surface reflected the sky and the forest, but in a distorted way, showing branches that seemed longer than they actually were, and shadows that did not correspond to the movements of people nearby. Small details faded from the memory of those who looked too long, as if the water were rewriting the reality around it. Some visitors noticed objects they had left on the shore shifting or changing shape. A backpack that had been intact appeared torn, a bottle returned crushed, and notebooks with notes had pages partially erased. It was impossible to understand whether these changes were natural or if the lake actually manipulated what it touched. The surrounding forest seemed alive and aware. Branches moved without wind, shadows lengthened, and the low mist thickened in the right places, confusing perceptions and blocking escape routes. Natural sounds diminished, and the absolute silence of the place created an oppressive feeling. Each step was accompanied by an invisible weight, as if gravity were more intense near the water. If this interpretation is making you rethink this story, leave a comment below with your perspective. These videos are meant to provoke reflection, and I read all the comments. And if this type of content interests you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. As the afternoon drew closer to night, visitors began to notice stronger distortions. The reflection of those near the lake showed impossible images, human figures that did not exist, and movements that no one had made. The lake not only observed, but began to influence the mind, confusing thoughts and fragmenting memories, leaving the curious disoriented without realizing the exact moment they were being manipulated. Objects disappeared or returned altered. Memories became confused, and the lake seemed deeper than the human body could measure. The tension grew with each passing minute, and the visitors began to understand that this place was not just a lake, but a living, silent, patient, and deadly secret. As night fell, The lake became even more unsettling. The black water seemed to absorb the light from the lanterns and the moon, creating a feeling of utter emptiness. Small ripples appeared for no apparent reason, suggesting that something was moving beneath the surface, but no one could identify what. Each step towards the shore brought a strange weight, an invisible pressure that increased the discomfort and fear. The group began to realize that the forest reacted to their movements. Branches snapped, shadows lengthened, and the low-lying mist moved almost intentionally, blocking paths and confusing perceptions. Objects left on the shore disappeared or reappeared in different places, as if they were being pulled or returned by the lake in a controlled manner. The sounds of the forest faded completely. Each breath seemed to echo louder, each step amplified by the surrounding silence. The figures reflected in the water did not correspond to real movements, showing distorted or impossible images of whoever was there. Even the most skeptical felt the subtle call of the lake, a silent attraction that prevented them from turning away. That night, the lake seemed more active than during the day. Small deformations on the surface altered reflections, and the feeling of being watched were constant. Some members of the group reported feeling intense pressure on their feet and legs, as if something invisible were holding them or pulling them down. Despite the fear, no one could completely move away, and everyone felt that the lake and the forest were working together to keep their secrets protected. When morning finally arrived, the lake looked exactly the same. The black water remained still, reflecting the gray sky and the surrounding forest, with no visible signs of what had happened during the night. But those who remained nearby knew the place was not safe. The air was still heavy. The low-lying mist carried an invisible sense of alert, and although no bodies or human remains were found, everyone felt the lake's presence as something alive, silent, and vigilant. The survivors slowly drifted away, each with fragmented memories and a strange sense of disconnection. Personal belongings they had left on the shore had disappeared or returned altered. A bottle was crushed, a backpack torn, a notebook partially erased. Each item seemed to carry a silent warning, a reminder that the water and the forest relentlessly guarded their secrets. In the following days, rumors began to spread about the lake. People commented on the absolute silence of the forest, on the shadows that seemed to move on their own, and on the strange feeling of being watched. Some curious onlookers tried to approach, but most quickly gave up, unable to ignore the feeling that something invisible yet powerful was observing them and influencing their every thought. The lake remained still, but its influence spread. Visitors who departed carried distorted fragments of memories, confused about what they had truly seen. Every reflection in the water seemed to alter perception. Every slight ripple suggested movements no one could identify, and the forest itself seemed to conspire to keep the secret intact. The illusory sense of belonging, of deceptive security, drew in those nearby, making it impossible to resist curiosity. Months later, the lake remained unchanged. New visitors were arriving, drawn by its silence and the tranquil appearance of the water. Some noticed subtle signs, thicker mist, shadows that moved erratically, and objects displaced at the edges. Even so, many were seduced by the apparent calm, ignoring the danger lurking beneath the surface. The lake didn't need to attack visibly. Its strength lay in its patience, subtlety, and silent manipulation of the mind. Every ripple, every shadow, and every distortion in the water served as a silent and irresistible warning. Anyone who dared to get too close felt the weight of the place on their body and in their memory, realizing too late that the forest and the lake worked together to guard their secrets, ready to swallow anyone who didn't understand the depth of the danger. In the end, the lesson was clear. Not everything that seems safe or familiar truly is. Not every feeling of comfort can be trusted. Some waters hold secrets that don't want to be revealed, memories that don't want to be remembered, and visitors who don't want to be returned. The lake remained still, calm and silent, but deadly in its subtlety. Whoever approached, even without realizing it, was about to get lost in its depths and shadows, becoming part of the forest that hides submerged secrets, eternally patient and relentless. If you enjoyed this approach and want to continue exploring stories that are almost never told this way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And now, click on the video that's appearing on the screen. It directly complements what you just watched and may completely change the way you see this story.